Hey, welcome to episode 85 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Episode 85, that's so fun, huh? Hi, I always say hi, I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I love talking to young people about loneliness, self-bullying, and proactive suicide prevention. Today, I have an amazing guest, but first, I have a question for you, if I can find it. Sometimes it helps if you sing. My question is, consider this, how does playing competitive sports as a kid in high school and college impact a person's career? The phenomenal guest I'm interviewing today will have some answers for us. Back in a sec. Back in a sec. It'd be seamless if I had this all queued up. And now I do. Back in a sec.
Today's guest, Dr. Ann Seppelt.
My friends, my guest today will give us some insights into this intriguing question from her abundant experience. The intriguing question I mentioned at the beginning, that is, let me tell you a little bit about Ann. I first met Ann Sieckert Seppelt when she was a volleyball star at Division II Augustana College, where we both were students. Now, Dr. Ann Seppelt. Dr. Ann Seppelt, I just love the doctor. It has a good ring to it. Now, Dr. Ann Seppelt is an assistant professor in the Department of Graduate Nursing at Winona State University, a certified pediatric nurse practitioner, and a PhD candidate at the University of Minnesota School of Nursing. Yes, Ann does a lot. In her practice as an RN registered nurse, Ann worked in over 9 nursing specialties, including the pediatric emergency room, pediatric oncology, inpatient mental health, and travel nursing. Before that, in high school and college, Ann was a devoted athlete. Her hard work paid off early as she won a state championship in discus during high school. She went on to win numerous collegiate awards, including, check this out, Division II Volleyball All-American, Academic All-American. In 1996, South Dakota NCAA Woman of the Year, and a selection as a top 10 finalist for the 1996 NCAA Woman of the Year Award, which was televised on ESPN. I'm so excited to ask Ann about her experiences in competitive sports and how it has given her the skills to play forward in her career. Without further ado, welcome Ann. Please help me welcome Ann. Hey, Dr. Ann Seppelt. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Jason. It's really an honor to come and to see you, my friends, and spend some time here with you.
Yes, this is going to be a great convo. I'm so excited to hear your answers to what we talk about. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure.
So I'm starting off. I'm already curious. What does sports teach you about self-discipline, and how do you use these skills as a nurse?
Well, thank you. I think for everyone, when we think of sports or have been in some kind of sports, we know that you have to practice a lot. The competition and the games, the fun part is probably a pretty small percentage of your time as an athlete. So it's lots of delayed gratification, I've found. And in terms of self-discipline, I think a big part of it is just, needing to perform on command, basically. So if you have a coach, telling you what you need to do in practice or in a game or whatever, you don't lots of times get to refer to yourself. Do I really feel like doing this? Or is this too hard for me? Or, this causes me stress. And so let's not go here. You just have to do it. And so it's kind of like you're up to the plate and you have to do what needs to be done. And so, I remember back when I was, gosh, I won't say how long this, in the 1990s, when I first was preparing for college volleyball, I was working at a resort for canoe outfitters up in the Boundary Waters area. So I was about 30 miles out of Grand Marais, and the place where I did my exercise was a Forest Service road out behind a gravel pit in the North Woods, and I would sprint on the gravel, using the telephone poles as my for distance and things like that, and very solitary thing, but you just pushing yourself, and so I remember that kind of a solitary, just committing yourself to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it, day after day. So that's a big piece that I think transfers over into whatever area of nursing you're in.
How do so many of us struggle with showing up for our own practices? Like, how, on that Forest Service role, your coach wouldn't have known if you didn't show up for a few days. So how do you inspire yourself to keep showing up?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think part of it that helps is sometimes we have personalities that are kind of driven in general, athletes, some more than others. But a big piece of it is casting that vision, and coaches help you do that, especially when they're recruiting you for college ball and things like that. They help you see your potential. You could do this. You could, become an All-American, an academic All-American, or get a postgraduate scholarship or things like that. And so having those out there in front of your mind that, wow, this is possible. I wouldn't really even think that was possible. It just kind of lights a fire, I think, in you that pushes you even when you're not thinking about it. But mostly, I think too, it's just kind of that competitive part of yourself that wants to succeed and wants to, be your best. So it's kind of a combination, I think, of having vision for yourself, which translates into goals, and then also nurturing those characteristics in yourself, or having people that do, to give you that drive. So
coaches for sure nurture those characteristics. So that leads to another question. what are a few things you learned from coaches that you carry into your nursing career?
That's a really good question. And looking back, I think one of the things I learn now, looking back, is coaches as leaders and coaches as teachers. Often, coaches make a huge impact in the lives of athletes, especially high school athletes, but also college athletes as well. And watching coaches, I see them more, as I look back, more as people now, with strengths and weaknesses like everybody else. But I think what I learned most is how to motivate, what works well in motivating a team or motivating students. And sometimes the most effective coaches for one personality might not be the same as for another one, but for me, it's the coaches that help you train a lot in practice, what's going to happen, prepare you. And then when it comes to the game, they kind of just let you play, and they sit there very calm and contained, even when, seems like everything is going in shambles sometimes, but it's almost like they have confidence that you will see it through. Excuse me, or at least they project that. And it's almost like they provide a containment space of calm, and it's going to be okay, and you can do this. And students, you can tell I'm in the nursing school world, but athletes will look to the coach and sense that, or will sense the opposite, if there's a lot of anxiety going on there and jumping and hollering, which some folks respond to. It's motivating, but holding a space of calm and confidence in the team, and giving you the liberty to do what you do best, and also who have that gift of seeing the talents in their players, in the specific things they do well. Some will do this well, and this well, and then how they mesh together. And I think even as a faculty person, that has taught me a lot, I think, and recognizing those things in my students, and that sort of thing. So
that's so interesting. As a watcher of many sporting events over the years, I always thought that profound coaching happened during the game, but it sounds like much more coaching happens before and after the game, huh?
I think in terms of student or athlete one-on-one, probably more, but there's all kinds of decisions that are happening during the game. And of course, as an athlete on the court, you're not paying as much attention to the decisions being made by coaches. And some of the best coaches, are able to make those decisions when they're needed, what players to put in, what plays to call, the preparation from via watching tape and all that, and all those kind of things. So there's that whole element. But in terms of one-on-one coaching, is kind of what I'm talking about, and direct input.
When you're talking about game time decisions and making them in the moment, it's sounded a lot like an emergency room scenario almost. Where can you talk a little about the similarities, maybe?
Yeah. I worked at a children's emergency room for 5 years, and trying it out, I've discovered through that process that there's some people that are more risk averse than others, but you learn a tolerance for risk when you work in an area like that. And there's certain people that are cut out to be coaches, and others that don't want to be put on the spot of when the pressure's on, for example, in football, it's the last 2 minutes of the game and you have to manage that, which I've never been a football coach, but not everybody wants to be in that position of under the time crunch and under the pressure of that. And I found that in working in the ER, there's a lot of that time pressure and high acuity, patients that are you don't need care right away. You need to make quick decisions, and you don't have the same amount of time as in other nursing specialties sometimes to go and look everything up in the chart. Although obviously you're keeping tabs very closely on the patient's history and the family and all that, but you have to make some decisions under pressure and trust your instincts and trust your knowledge and your experience and your skill that you've prepared. But I guess I would say, in finding your niche in nursing, it's kind of like that. Is it a fit for my personality? There's many different ways to lead and to coach and to be in nursing. Sometimes it's that way about being a provider, being a nurse practitioner, for example, whether it's for adults or peds or acute care, working in the hospital. That's a good thing I find for my students, is to help them, look at, what do you really like to do? Do you like making decisions where there is an element of risk, where you might miss something, on a peds patient, and you're working in a peds ICU or something, can you handle the pressure of that? And can you prepare yourself and be confident to do that? So I don't know, that's a little bit, I guess.
That's fascinating. Just really quick question. When you're on the spot, either in a sporting event or in a medical situation, you've somehow learned to become expansive and use your energy well. Whereas other people in a similar situation might shut down. Any ideas about what creates the drastic difference in the two ways of being in a similar situation?
That's a really, really good question. And sometimes it makes me think of when we experience fear in our life or threat, there's different, there's fight and flight and freeze, amongst other, autonomic responses and things. And I guess some of us are a little bit more into the fight than flight, and plus in combination with, I think, the pleasure of competition and just engaging and also realizing that having an understanding that the world is not going to blow up if you lose, So in a sense, it's evaluating risk also. And that's like the ER too. You learn what is risky and what is not as risky. And so, kind of when you need to, a little anxiety is a good thing because you need to be sharp. But I think part of it is having a little bit of a drive or a lot in terms of successful athletes or leaders. Aggression, being aggressive. In volleyball, hammering the ball and when it needs to happen and you want the ball to be set to you, in the crunch time. A lot of that is personality, to tell you the truth. And but not everybody wants to be that outside hitter, and it may be the middle hitter or the right side, or it may be athletes on defense that'll just make that play of the game that's really that pivotal tipping point. So aggression and drive can show up in many different ways. It's not always the flashy the flashy aggressiveness. But you do kind of have to have that driven personality, I think, to in certain sports, power sports in particular, I think.
Speaking of the rewards of drive, what did it feel like to win all those awards kind of in a fairly short period of time, right? In 1996, how did you first learn that you were going to be winning awards that year?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question. I think it was a little surreal for me and a little bit Alice in Wonderland is kind of the feeling I had kind of. I remember where I was. I was actually a student assistant coach with the team at that time. And I was out in kind of a, I don't know, an open area, and a coach came and told me that I had been selected for this, for the top 10 NCAA Woman of the Year. And I felt very small townish, to tell you the truth. You know, they had written a newspaper article on me once, and they said something like, you know, girl from the woods, you know, was kind of I mean, it was, you know, it was cute, it was nice, but I felt it's kind of like this is kind of bigger than I'm used to, a little bigger pond, you know, than I'm used to. But I felt really thankful, honestly. And when you're pushing for so long to, you know, just kind of reach your best and do your best, it's almost as much of a relief. You know, winning All-American, for example, was a relief, kind of, because you just want to reach that goal, and you've sacrificed so much, and it means so much, that there's joy, but it's a mixture of emotions, you know. But the other one is just pretty much kind of just ecstatic, like totally surprised, you know, wouldn't have never have expected that. So,
but also like must have been a great complete feeling of completion of your effort. Like, oh my gosh, I made this effort, and it's being recognized, and it's being seen. And
yeah, yes, yep. And when people talk about feeling humble, you know, it's kind of it's a complex feeling, isn't it? Kind of like, wow, I'm really blessed to receive this, and at the same time, there's that joy of really, I like what I did, you know, I like that, and yet I still really feel really blessed, and not quite even sure I deserve this, you know. But humility is I don't know, it's kind of a beautiful emotion sometimes, you know. It's complex, and staying grounded while you're still just really liking what's happening, and so yeah.
I love this next question. What do you mean when you say you have a taste for challenges?
You took my bullet point, yeah. I had sent you a couple bullet points.
I just love the turn of phrase. I have a taste for challenges.
Oh yeah, it's a little poetic, isn't it? I think when you're in athletics in college, and you have those big games, and you have those moments of victory, and you know, you just ecstatic, and it's just, you see the product of all your work and then what you've accomplished as a team, all these different aspects of the team working together, and it's so relational that you know, it's not it's a little addictive, I guess, you know. And also, I think that's what happens with athletics that carries over too into a career, is that you get a taste for excellence and for what can happen. That doesn't that there's not a guarantee that these successes and things will happen, but if you push towards them together with your friends and colleagues, you can get places you never would have thought. So you get kind of a taste for it, I guess. Like, what's the next mountain to climb?
Speaking of friends and colleagues, sometimes as a layperson, we have an image of a doctor or a nurse working more on their own to help a patient, but in reality, it's a great deal of teamwork, isn't it?
Yes, more than people would realize, particularly in some specialties more than others. You know, there's a tension with that in nursing too. Just like on a team, you know, when teams break down, it's usually when there's stress and everyone tries to win the game by themselves, it seems like, you know. But there's a pulling apart of that, what might have been cohesive at one point. And I think that happens a lot in the nursing unit, especially, you know, these days. Now, you know, there's such a huge nursing shortage. And so as I talk to my students, working in these different areas and ICUs, caring for patients with COVID, over these last couple of years, and just, so understaffed. That tends to pull at the fabric of that teamwork. It can also make you work together. Lots of times it draws people, together, but in other situations, it can be kind of a scapegoating situation that everybody feels like they're drowning, But on the other hand, it can be just tremendous. I was talking to a faculty colleague, about where she started off in the ER, and when she had to, run a code, they call it, or a resuscitation of a patient in the cardiac ICU, is what she was doing. And she was a brand new nurse, and they just said, okay, you need to run this code, or you need to lead this code. And so she would stand at the end of the bed. This is, not everyone's the same, but this is a typical process. And she would stand at the end of the foot of the patient's bed. And then you have different disciplines and from MDs to respiratory therapists to RNs to paramedics, these different people, they're different skills. And then they'll go in and do these different aspects. And that person at the foot of the bed really is like a conductor, I guess, of a symphony, sort of, and they're calling out, well, this medication, has that been given? Or, obviously receiving guidance from the MD in the room. Lots of times it can be the provider in the room who is, giving that guidance. So, in this case, it was the ICU. So, RNs sometimes take a little bit more directive in that situation than they might be.
So in this example, this is a brand new nurse suddenly conducting a code. Talk about being put into a leadership position.
Yeah, and it's not like she wasn't supported, and hadn't been trained. She probably had a good 3 months of orientation, and probably sometime after that. And she's well supported by, people right around her that can help. But you only learn by doing sometimes, and cardiac ICU is not a sit back and sit and eat popcorn kind of thing if you're an RN, you got to get in and do it when it needs to happen. So
this brings up a great point about nursing and medicine in general. So, at a certain point from classroom learning to actually doing, and when you're doing, there's people's lives involved. What's that transition like?
That's a really good question. And again, depends on the personality of people and how well they've been prepared in the programs. I like to say that sometimes it's scrambling up the learning curve. That's what it feels like. You're just trying to scramble up, and hopefully you make it, because sometimes that's pretty steep, and you need to, according to your personality, get into a specialty where, you can do what you need to do in that situation. So it's funny when you look at it. Not funny. It's interesting when you look at how students approach situations, because in nursing school too, that's a stressful thing, just to come onto the hospital unit for the first time, or whatever area of practice, and to jump into things even with one patient, and so there's that tension between, are you going to just jump in and have no awareness of risk, just kind of like, I can do this, and there's no attention to the complexity. Then you have an issue and you need to coach there, and then you have the other side where, it becomes so overwhelming sometimes for folks if they start too quickly, and so it's kind of that tension and finding the right fit. And these days, boy, the complexity from when I started, my hospital nursing days, I'm not currently practicing in the hospital, but did so, about 20 years or so. But nowadays, the complexities that nurses are going into, student nurses, and taking care of patients with COVID and really sick patients, lots of technology. Patients are leaving the hospital while they're sicker, so the patient, a lot of people know that when they're sick or something, they're only in the hospital for a couple of days, or it's the same day surgery where you have your total hip or total knee, and some people are out the same day. So that means that when you're coming into that situation, you have a higher acuity, higher illness level of patients. So the risk is higher. And so it kind of depends on the support around the nurse. And that's a good thing. The RN or nurse practitioner, acute care nurse practitioner, or and then also I think learning to when you talk about athletics and how can some people just kind of, engage and just go after it, even though there's a lot of stress. There's something I call game face. And I think, a lot of people say game face, put on your game face. And it's almost like you're in a vehicle and you shift down into first gear or four-wheel drive,
Oh, yeah.
You're almost distancing yourself from the risk of the situation and getting more into the cognitive decision-making, mature, more mature adult part of yourself, and set aside your own fears and realizing that the patient here is the focus, and the safety of this patient or this group of patients. And doing that allows you to, to step back from your emotions a little bit, sometimes set them aside till later. And then it's easier to prioritize the many different things. You might have a call from call into the oncologist, because someone's blood work is looking terrible and you're really concerned, but at the same time you're getting a admission of another patient that just came onto the floor, and the patient over there is doing this family is needing something, where there's a lot of concerns here, and it can be overwhelming at first until you realize how to prioritize things, and what needs to happen now, and what's a safety risk, and so getting that game face on and learning to do that. Sports helped me a lot for that, athletics, to realize that if you're in a situation where you naturally feel fear and you naturally feel risk, another example, that you separate that and you step up, and some people become more calm in those situations, and other people have a little more difficult time containing those emotions. And I think working in mental health, and acute care mental health, when you maybe have a patient that is getting really dysregulated, they might be kicking doors and kicking doors or pounding their head, trying to injure themselves or things like that. To work in those areas, it helps a lot if you can get in that place where you calm yourself. You just automatically go to more calm and put aside those emotions you have, and then you can de-escalate the situation more. And that can be tough in ER and places like that in general, with providers and RNs during this time with COVID. You have to set aside those feelings, but then sometimes it's hard to make time later on to actually process those feelings. And so you have burnout, a lot of burnout, during this COVID era, and exhaustion and things like that, secondary trauma. So, whether people have been athletes or not, people learn these skills, but learn to do that game face piece, but you can, that's time limited. You have to take care of yourself still and do those self-care things. And
so game face is a big deal, but then that always needs to be self-care at some point, huh?
yes, yeah. As an athlete, I remember after the games, you could go out and eat whatever fast food place you're at, or restaurant, and I would eat food and I would just about fall asleep. It was a joke about it. I almost fall asleep right over my food, because all that adrenaline and all that, all that focus and energy towards this goal and towards competing and pushing yourself physically, it's just physiologically, I think you just have that kind of crashing point. And I think that for sure happens in healthcare, and that's why we need to, have policies in place and processes in place at hospitals, to really, make it easy for healthcare providers and RNs and other providers to have those spaces to just be, or to talk to other people. Sometimes it might be a Zoom session of support where the person doesn't even have to have their face on Zoom. They could just sit there and listen, in terms of processing maybe a difficult day, if a patient is lost or something and from COVID, or just, I didn't take care of patients with COVID, but so many patients lost in such short periods of time, that there has to be those practical ways for people to get in touch with those feelings, be able to grieve, and have it be safe. Not everyone wants to show up into a big group with, sitting in chairs in a circle. Some people do, but there has to be that help in place, and I think that's what they're pushing for in different government policies and things like that to provide programs for that, funding for that. So
that's so good, so good. I want to get back to something we talked about a little bit ago. You mentioned if a sports team gets stressed, or a medical team can get stressed, things can start unraveling for the dynamic. Do you ever see a coach of a sports team sense that dynamic and somehow get everyone back on the same page?
Sometimes it can feel like the coach is unraveling on the sideline, and everybody on the court's like, well, we just need to do this, So it kind of can be both ways. It depends on the experience of the coach. Lots of times, I think every coach at some point in their life is newbie, just like, RNs scrambling up their learning curve, basically. But what I've observed, I guess, more than anything is the coaches that can, be in that huddle and are just very calm and, aren't maybe pulling out it depends on the situation, obviously, and how the complexity of it. But if it's just a lot of it's just about settling people down, helping people just loosen up a little bit, maybe cracking a joke and it's almost too that I think it's that unconditional acceptance as well, that we have something in ourselves, I think, as people that, we're afraid of failure, and we, it's very noxious to feel the shame or the feelings of public, failure or falling short of your goal here. And if you have coaches that have something internally where they can be present and, just make it clear by who they are that, who you are doesn't change whether you, conquer this or win this game, and I think that essence itself communicates to the team sometimes, and there's a difference, something can shift and they can go out on the court and just relax a little bit more rather than overthinking. In other situations, coaches know if people are just kind of, haven't been focusing and you're kind of been lazy, sometimes they'll need to, I don't know, be a little more, get on you a little bit, someone say. But I would say even more inspirational during those times, being inspirational and or being kind of that calm and in the storm. Because I think it's kind of difficult actually to pull it together for a team when things are falling apart. It's possible, but I think a lot more times it happens on the court by athlete leaders, with each other, talking to each other. But coaches certainly play a part, big part.
It's interesting how often you're mentioning the idea of people having a calm presence and that being a huge asset. Well, in medicine, it's so high tech and it's just so high tech, but you're saying the calm presence still really matters, huh?
Hugely. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. There's kind of that piece of I've heard it called the window of tolerance, where you have this window of your emotions here, and if your anxiety gets too high, you're outside the top of the window, and your focus gets super narrow, and so you're not able to take in the facts and the changing variables in certain situations. And so then if you go out the bottom, you just kind of freeze, or your mind clouds up, and you kind of can't function sometimes. But if you can, and that's part of athletics too, I think, is learning to stay in that window of performance too, where you're containing your emotions and drawing on calm, kind of what you've put into your own self-growth times outside of work or outside of athletics. Certain practices, whether it's faith practices or spiritual practices or yoga or meditation, nurturing that calm. I think you bring that in to those situations to stay within that window. And it's can be transmitted very easily. We all know, I think, what it's like to be in a room where there's a lot of stress going on. You walk in and you just feel kind of the energy and the tension. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't really want to be here right now. And so if you have coworkers or particularly people in leadership, the provider, anybody can come in who has the knowledge and the experience to back it up, and come in with that place of centeredness and calm. People can feel that, patient can feel that, and it's a wonderful thing, And I think nurses, that's one thing I do like about nursing a lot, is I think nurses bring a lot of that to care, having seen, a lot of that piece. The nurturing element too, I suppose, for some, although for a lot, maybe it's a little more cerebral in the process, but you still bring that kind of quiet confidence sometimes,
Quiet confidence, calm sounds like it's, doesn't sound like, I know it's such a gift.
Yeah, I think there is a gift of it. Or maybe, I don't know. I think that's people in general.
It's a gift to the people.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I'd like to think so, and it's not to say that nurses don't, feel like their hair is on fire, too. I mean, I remember a time when I was working in the cities in a peds floor, and they didn't have a pediatric ICU in this hospital. And I had this little baby, this little patient, little infant that had RSV, so respiratory syncytial virus, and is, a little young baby, maybe 2 months old. And when that happens, they could start breathing really fast for very long periods of time. And little babies, I mean, when they're young enough, they're breathing like 80 times a minute sometimes when they're that sick, and you can't maintain that forever. And so, but they'll work at it, and they get so stuffy and coughing, and the mom is just stressful for everyone. But there's a point where, the baby just starts, there's a word for it. We call it crumping, kind of, where our little, the little one in there is just not being able to maintain that, of course. And then if their breathing lowers down, and then blood oxygen level starts dropping, and maybe level of consciousness starts, and you have this little baby, and all of a sudden you as a RN are going down the hall, or I'm sure whatever level of provider, there's a moment when your blood runs cold. That's what my experience is. The fear runs through you that way, and you realize that the decisions you're making right now, when you have no ICU to bring them down the hall, so you're probably going to need to fly this child out for care, and you need to put a lot of processes in place, and and get a code team. Lots of times now in hospitals, they have a lot of these different teams that just come into that situation and take care of everything. And, that's their job, is to, but, 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't always the case, and so you have to, you have to make these decisions right, and you have to make them now, and you need to know the trajectory of that patient and have those instinctual pieces, and paying attention to the dynamics. How is mom doing? How is what is mom saying about how the baby's, the infant is doing, and things like that. And feeling that tipping point when things are, something needs to be done, because, that's very much similar to an athletics, where, well, it's kind of like, some will call it killer instinct. I don't know, but like maybe in boxing, where they realize we've got him on the ropes. Now is the time to go, because we could put him on the person on the mat or whatever. But in volleyball, for example, sometimes it's a more subtle sensing of the situation, that now is the time. We've got to get this point. And it might be even in the middle of a game. Out of 5 games, it might be one of the games where you just feel the momentum shift. We've heard of that too. And so it's similar to that sensing piece. And you learn to trust that instinct in a game, I think, and when to press in, even though that causes some anxiety, now or never. But there is that piece in nursing for sure. It really makes it interesting, and it also makes it's not something I would like to have all the time,
No.
cold running through your veins. But some people really enjoy that adrenaline rush, and when you have enough experience, you learn to tolerate those things a lot better, and a lot more knowledge. I was fairly early in my career.
So this feeling of sensing is something you experienced on the volleyball court, and it sounds like it came back to you at crucial moments when you were helping this tiny baby.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. In other situations too, whether it's, in collaboration with other providers, or subtleties are happening with patients, and you need to be aware of that. Something's not right. Some things you need to follow up with this, or medicate this, or, but it's also being able to tolerate, there's something called, what's it called? I don't know, but being able to tolerate those difficult emotions, because when this is the tipping point and something really important needs to happen now, and there's a lot at stake, your license, we talked about the patient well-being and the patient outcomes, the family outcomes, in healthcare, these kind of decisions, your license can be on the line every time too, and that's, that's a whole nother piece of it, is there is a certain threat to your own career, even though that goes behind the care you're providing, but being able to hold those feelings and kind of set them aside and go to that place of calm. You just go to the calm, and your mind works better that way.
What do you love about being a nurse?
Well, there's a lot of things I love about being a nurse, and one of the things I love is that nursing is not just something you do at the job. Nursing, I heard someone say nursing is not what you do, it's what you know. It's not a task or this task. I mean, there's a whole knowledge base and way of looking at the world, and the way you see people, and you see people in at least from my experience, in a much more holistic way, where you're noticing these details about how their family is getting together, getting along together, or you're noticing their emotions. Are they experiencing fear? Are they you're automatically, if it's a person who is an elder person, you're watching, their gait as they're going across the parking lot, and are they at risk for falls, or you're seeing a little baby, and you might be running through diagnoses in your mind as a nurse practitioner, what could be going on, and these various different questions. So, but it's not just that. It's I don't know. You get to have compassion for people and show up for people, even it's in that, a lot of people can do that in their job, but nurses, lots of times, if you choose to, you can be right at the bedside, but be with people right in these moments that are so impactful in their whole life experience, that you can show up with comfort, knowledge, skill, sometimes rescue, but that emotional piece that you get to make a transformative impact, I think. That's one thing I love, that, everyone, we all want to live a fulfilling life. And as I look back, that's one of the most, beyond, awards are really nice and I appreciate them, but what really sticks is to think, okay, I was able to bring my skill and my ability to be calm, or whatever talents people have, and show up for people. And sometimes it's just, there's nursing is so complex now. There's so much in terms of certain kinds of care, but some of it boils down to that caring. Nurse theorists talk about, or have written about over the years. And I think that is a piece of what motivates people to do that. So
beyond all the complex technical skills that you're teaching your students, what do you most want to impart to them?
That's a really good question. I think as a faculty person, I want who I am in terms of my experience in nursing, and who I am as a person in self-growth, to have some sort of a transformative change for my students, that maybe they see things a little bit different. Maybe they, it's hard to explain, because sometimes a lot of things are caught more than taught. You probably heard that too. And so, I want them to catch by the way I model things, or the way I communicate, or the way I listen to them, or respond to them, or talk about patients. Am I talking about patients respectfully? What terms am I using? Another piece I want them to learn is how to manage risk. I think that's a big piece. I'll give metaphors and things about how you can be safe in your career. There's some things beyond your control, but there's certain things that are in your control in terms of habits that you can develop. So that understanding of a risk is a complex thing, and helping people understand that, and how to keep the patient front and center, and families, and I think different professors. There's a lot of, I teach healthcare policy, I teach epidemiology, at least right now, and evidence-based practice and things like that. And I love the research side of things, and I love learning, and I love communicating the love of learning to students, and helping them catch fire for what they're passionate about. And, I love that. And at the same time, for me, I think it's more some of those internal things, passing on some of those internal character traits, and habits, and things like that. So it's hard to put that into words, obviously, the things that are caught more than taught. But it's a combination of things. But
it sounds like you also love helping students figure out where they're going to thrive on the nursing team.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the most fun things I like too, is hearing what, because there's so many ways. That's another thing I like about nursing is you don't have any need to be bored ever, because even if you're in a job that right now isn't quite what you hoped it would be or where you feel like you fit, there's so many different specialties in the hospital, outside of the hospital, public health, and in the corrections, and in all kinds of different areas. But yeah, so for students, listening to what they're excited about. And unfortunately, since I've tried so many things for about 2 years each, I about 90 different specialties. I stayed there about 2 years each, enough to learn until I came to mental health.
Experience.
Yeah, I used to think this doesn't maybe look so good on my resume, but actually now it's totally come in handy. It's been very, very useful because you learn a lot about hospital systems and about performance improvement and things like that at systems level too by working across. But you also can talk to students about a little bit what that's like, or just talking too about long-term goals. If you want to do this, if you want to work part-time so you have more life balance, you can do more than one thing. You can have, but you have to control your debt. Maybe you drive a used car for a while. It's just interesting, the conversations you get into as you connect with students as people and coach them. Well, I guess I do quite a bit of coaching to help them get where they want to go. That's really interesting, actually. I think I have become more of a coach.
So you were coached through great success in high school and college, and now you're coaching
Yes, I am.
your students.
Yeah, I forget that sometimes. Never thought I'd be a coach. I'm not a coach, but I guess I am a coach. It's just not in the college athletics.
So last question, and I ask all my guests this. So I talk about imperfect best a lot. And what I do and what it means to me is we each have a vision of our best and we go for it. But when imperfections, mistakes come up, we look at them and then use that knowledge to move forward instead of using it as a reason to stop. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
That's a great question. Doing my imperfect best. When I learned about, and you wrote this book, I don't know, 4 years ago now, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Awkwardly awesome. And I remember I took it just a little bit and made a mantra. Remember that for myself? My imperfect best is enough. And I posted that on my board, and I remind myself about that, and so I think that's a piece of it, is remembering that mantra in whatever I do. I think my imperfect best is knowing what my values are, and then looking at, is my life living according to those values? So if maybe the value of generosity or compassion or excellence. My imperfect best is I'm not gonna be everything aligned perfectly, obviously, but whatever those values are, am I living that way? So at the end of my life, I can say, well, I didn't, that I don't evaluate it in a way that I was perfect, or obviously wouldn't, but did I live according to my values? Did I go that direction, and what matters most in my heart, and what to me feel is most important. So
powerful. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, Dr. Ann Sieckert. Thanks for all you continue to do in the nursing field, and how that ripples out into the world. It's so exciting to think about, and just thank you for all you do and all you teach.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. And thank you too for what you're doing here, bringing this positivity and hope. You know, I feel that when I watch your broadcasts and your program. You bring that hope and centeredness. You bring a lot of that, which is wonderful. And I'm glad to be able to call you my friend too.
Yeah, I'm glad. We've been friends for college was only a few years ago.
Oh, decades. Yeah.
Or decades. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool. Talk to you very soon.
Yes.
I say this every week, but I feel it every week. I just love sitting down for an hour and talking with people. Like, even I've known Ann since college, but we've never had this exact conversation, and I learned so much, and I'm re-inspired in new ways, and it's just so exciting. I encourage you to ask the people around you, like even the people you've known for years that you think they know you by heart and you know them by heart. Ask them curious questions. Start conversations you haven't had. And you might find out some amazing things, and you might be able to share some amazing things. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, I have another great guest, Mr. John Dickerson. So tune in next Wednesday for that, and we'll have the usual time next week. And thanks for your time and watching this podcast. And until next week, the outro.